Good morning and welcome to this formal meeting of the Public Protection and Community Scrutiny Committee. I'll make it 10 o'clock, but if you go on by the clock directly in front of me, it's 11 o'clock. I'm Councillor Nigel Pepper of this committee. The Vice Chairman, Councillor Paul Skinner, is also in attendance. Can I remind you that the audio-visual feed of this formal public meeting is being broadcast live via the County Council's website. And with this in mind, I would like to welcome members of the public watching this live. As the meeting is being streamed in the usual way, I would like to remind you that your comments will remain accessible online and can be reported by the media. I would like to begin with a health and safety announcement. Excuse me. There is no fire drill planned this morning. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, we need to leave the council chamber through the rear doors and leave the building through the reception into the front car park and wait there. Can I remind everyone to ensure their mobiles, laptops and iPads are on silent, please, for the duration of this meeting. Also, may I remind you that the hearing loop is now activated. Requests to speak will be collated by the Vice Chairman. When invited to speak, you should press the button on your microphone unit to make it live, then press again when you finish your contribution. We will now move on to the formal agenda. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence, replacement councillors. Trina, I turn to you. Do we have any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we've received apologies for absence from Councillor Gray and Councillor Key. We've also had an apology from Nicole Hilton, and Will Mason is attending remotely, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, did I hear Lee Surdyfield wasn't coming?
Lee Surdyfield, yes, his apologies are in.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Item 2, declarations of council interest. Do any members wish to declare any interest, please? No, can't see any, so we'll move on to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting of the Public Protection and Community Scrutiny Committee held on the... Sorry, Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I'm down as being present. I was indeed present at the beginning, but people might have noticed that I left. I had sciatica and had a very funny reaction to some tablets that I'd taken, and just wanted to reassure people that I won't make a habit of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that contribution. Okay, so item 3, minutes of the previous meeting held on the 19th of September. This item is to approve and sign the minutes of the last meeting held on the 19th of September as a correct record. The minutes can be found on pages 7 to 17 of the agenda pack. Do I have a proposer, please? Councillor Skinner, seconder. Councillor Sneath. All those in favour? Okay, that's carried, thank you. Just, was nobody against, was there? No abstentions, I didn't ask that. Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Clark. You abstain? And you abstain too, because you was both away, yeah. Okay, and Councillor Austin.
I abstain. I wasn't present at the last meeting. Are there any spare papers? I'm sorry, I'm of the generation that likes paper.
Okay, I'm sure that can be arranged. So that's carried, thank you. Item 4 is announcements by the Chairman, Executive Councillors and Lead Officers. Just one from myself, that Martin Parker, the Assistant Director for Public Protection, retired from Lincolnshire Police on the 24th of October, thus ending his secondment to Lincolnshire County Council. On behalf of the committee, I'd like to record our thanks to Martin for all the support and advice he has provided to the committee during his secondment to the Council. As we have a busy agenda, officers are reminded to take their reports as read by committee members and only summarise key points and what support and input is required by this committee. Members are also reminded of the importance of succinct questions and contributions, and that your line of questioning should be relevant and add value to the debate. Moving on, are there any Executive Council announcements, please? Nope, can't see any. None online, I take it. Thank you. Are there any announcements from senior officers, please? No? Okay, so we'll move on. We'll move on to the main items of business. We will first sit as the Crime and Disorder Scrutiny Committee under Section 19 of the Crime and Justice Act 2006 for item 5 on the agenda. This has been brought forward due to an exempt item for consideration by the Public Protection and Community Scrutiny Committee at the end of the agenda. So item 5, Safer Lincolnshire Partnership Fraud Update Report. The report is on pages 19 to 28 of the agenda pack and provides an update on the collaborative working undertaken by the Crime and Disorder Core Priority Group of the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership, whose current priority is focused on digitally enabled fraud and ID theft. Our actions for today were required by the committee to review the content of the report and offer comment on the continued delivery of the work of the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership's Crime and Disorder Core Priority Group in the proposed format. The report will be presented by Vicky Salmon, Community Strategy Coordinator. I also think, Vicky, you've got a presentation for us, is that correct? So over to you, Vicky.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. So this morning I'd like to give you a quick update on the work we've been doing around fraud and scams. As the report indicates, our main area of focus since the most recent strategic assessment has been on digitally enabled fraud and ID theft. And just to be clear, digitally enabled fraud is defined as crimes which do not depend on computers or networks, but have been transformed in scale or form by the use of internet and communications technology. Anyone can be a victim of fraud, but our most vulnerable residents are at risk. Individuals can be vulnerable for various reasons. This can include their age, locality, their digital skills and social connections. Fraud has been shown to have a significant impact on vulnerable victims, not only on financially, but on their health and well-being. And the work of the group seeks to ensure that residents are informed and better able to protect themselves from being a victim or a repeat victim. So our first objective was around working with partners to organise community events to raise awareness of digitally enabled fraud in localities where evidence suggests people most at risk. Given the factors I gave you a moment ago, a lot of the county is at risk of fraud, but we had noted some increased risk around our coastal areas, but again, fraud is something that's waiting for all of us, unfortunately. So we have covered the whole county. Just to give you a few snippets of the things we've been involved in the last financial year. We've been working in Skegness with County Care, focusing on adults with learning disabilities and engaging with their carers too. We've done 2 events in Sleaford with a particular focus on romance fraud and criminal traders, rogue traders. We were at the Lincolnshire show this year. We were able to attend the UKRO festival at Lincoln Castle, and were able to engage with the public there and carry out a survey. We had some very interesting results from the survey and found out that everyone we spoke to was actually concerned about fraud to some degree, and 19% of the people we talked to were extremely worried about fraud. 85% of the people we spoke to, either them or their family had experienced fraud, and over half of them said they had reported their fraud, but on closer inspection they'd reported it to their bank. So there's some work we need to do there about making sure that people communicate their reporting to the proper channels. And the reasons people didn't report it was they said they felt stupid, it didn't feel worth it, or the matter was too complex, or they assumed that people already knew about the fraud. So again, I think there's some work for us to focus on there. Most people got their information about fraud from the television. After that, it was the radio or Facebook. And people wanted to learn more about fraud, and they particularly wanted to find out about lived experience of people with fraud, and that was something people thought would help communicate messages around fraud. We've been working very closely with Age UK Lindsay, getting out and about with their information bus across the whole of East and West Lindsay. Our Scams officer and the Lincolnshire Police Fraud Protect officer have been doing community talks and talks for staff across the whole county. And most recently we were in Sleaford for their Riverlight Festival. On top of all of this, we do very regular social media updates, links alert, and we have regularly updated literature. If you could, next slide please. Just to let you know, we are looking for more up-to-date evidence to support this ongoing activity. We have potential partnership plans to continue this awareness activity into next year. We need to make sure that we have enough materials and equipment to support our engagement in the communities, and that we've identified a focus around making sure we communicate our messages with people that maybe don't receive mainstream messages, people without digital skills, people with sensory impairments, and people with English as a second language, and those that simply don't use the internet. I'll pick up on that a little bit later. Our second objective was around prevention of victimisation through the installation of call blockers. This has been a really successful piece of work. We're able to install 80 call blockers between Lincolnshire County Council Scams Officer and the Fraud Protect team at Lincolnshire Police. We managed to block over 9,000 nuisance calls, and 2,500 scam calls were blocked. And the wider savings to society calculated using these 80 units was 1.3 million. Those are savings for the individual, and I say wider society, that victims of fraud may then need further assistance from public services. So they've been very successful, and staff have worked really hard to make sure that those are in the right place. Just to give you a little bit more feedback. Yes, please. Thank you. Nearly everyone felt that the installation of the call blocker had a significant personal benefit to them. As you can see, people were more confident answering the phone. They would recommend it to others, and it had a positive impact on their well-being. Those that actually didn't were people that had experienced perhaps grooming methods of fraud, which were quite embedded with them, but generally very, very successful. They made people feel safer. They could sleep better. Nothing untoward had happened. They felt more relaxed, and it had been wonderful. It had taken a weight off their back. Thank you. Our third objective was around focusing on digitally enabled criminal traders. So these are people that had taken advantage of technology and COVID, and the National Trading Standards team highlighted the fact that criminals were using online trader platforms such as Facebook Marketplace and other online groups to advertise their services and prey on potential victims. So we had the target of sharing as much information as we could possible with regards to digitally enabled criminal traders. So over the course of 11 months, particularly partners in trading standards and community safety, but other partners as well, delivered a comprehensive campaign. We focused on a number of areas. Yes, please. We had a poster campaign across Lincolnshire libraries. Our criminals are adapting. We had 2 separate social media campaigns letting people know about the tactics of criminal traders. We were able to have articles in local publications, and we were successful in getting those articles taken up by national publications, and we were also out and about in the community letting people know face to face about the changing tactics of criminal traders. This piece of work has been signed off now, and actually we have all these assets available for colleagues to use whenever we notice a pattern or problem. We can share them. At the moment we have the changing weather, so we have some assets prepared to let people know that criminal traders may be using the weather as a reason to knock on people's doors as well. So very good to have those. Yes, please. Our next piece of work was around making sure that we raise awareness within our staff and colleagues working with our most vulnerable individuals. This has been a very successful piece of work again. In the last financial year, we had over 1,400 colleagues from LCC and wider organisations such as district councils and charities undertake our e-learning. And our scams officer again has been talking to many people in the public. Our Fraud Protect officer has been connecting with professionals across the county. The estimated impact from this work is over £112,000 through sharing messages and making people aware of the signs and symptoms of fraud. Coming next, we have bespoke training for our adult care colleagues, and the same again for our fire advocate colleagues. And already this year, up until Q2, 600 staff have completed the Friends Against Scams e-learning, so that's moving forward very successfully. Just to touch then on the next slide, please. Our final objective that we've been looking at this most recent year has been around focusing our prevention messages on those groups that I mentioned a moment ago, having limited access to mainstream messaging. Using different sources of evidence, we've been able to establish that people without digital skills maybe need some support. People who choose not to use the internet or social media, people for whom English is a second language, and then those who have sensory or other impairments that may impact on their ability to receive mainstream messaging. This work is just getting underway. We've undertaken some initial mapping, so we've found out about organisations promoting digital skills. We're looking into options around getting into radio for people that maybe don't use the internet, and promoting as much information as we can through other publications. National Trading Standards team has translated a number of their materials into other languages, and we've used census data to make sure that those are suitable for people within Lincolnshire, and we've engaged with the Lincolnshire Sensory Service to try and move forward and make sure that our messages are useful. We were able to share a webinar that was in BSL, which has been very useful, and we hope for this work will continue to progress, and that there will be lessons that we can learn for other areas, not just sharing fraud prevention messages. And just before I finish talking about the work of the Crime and Disorder Group, I wanted to let you know that our current focus is on digitally enabled fraud and ID theft, but we're waiting to undertake another strategic assessment to make sure that our priority is focused on the right area and the kinds of fraud that we're looking at and raising attention of. So next slide, please. The final thing that I wanted to tell you about is our work without my Safer Lincolnshire Partnership hat on and just my Lincolnshire County Council hat, is that we have a Safer Together partnership agreement with Lincolnshire Police, and we work collaboratively. We work collaboratively in a number of ways, but the examples that I wanted to tell you about in connection to scams and fraud are our Scams and Intervention and Prevention Officer. That this person works in a truly partnership position. They're funded by Trading Standards, hosted in community safety. They're embedded within our Lincolnshire Police Fraud Protect team, and they have very close links to adult social care. We've been able to use our partnership here to maximise the work of this one individual, and then to further emphasise the point, we have the ability to share information with our partners. So, for example, our Scams Officer is connected to the Trading Standards database. They are connected with the appropriate rights to the Lincolnshire Police databases and also to adult social care database as well. So we can make sure that individuals that need the support are as supported as they can be, and that intelligence gathering for enforcement purposes is as smooth as it can be as well. So two really successful pieces of collaboration there. Just to finalise, I wanted to say, yes please, if you're not already a Friends Against Scams, this is my little thing, please click. There's an 8-minute video or a short course that you can undertake to become a Friend Against Scams. I think there's been some fantastic work in the last year across the county through partnership and collaboration. Prevention truly is at the heart of everything we do to make people safe from fraud. Partners have been creative in the way that they approach prevention activity, and they've delivered key messages and provided support when it's most needed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'd now like to invite members of the committee to speak on this item. Do we have any speakers, please? Councillor Mrs. Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. I'll let you finish coughing in it. Do you want a sweet? I've got a hole, so have you got some? Yeah, thank you for the report. It's very well put together and loads of information in there. The couple of things actually I just was interested in. I'm really pleased to see that you've expanded the information. Well, you probably did have it anyway, but you've said that you've now expanded information into printed form in other languages. I'd just like to know what other languages, because you said that was suitable for Lincolnshire. So I'd like to know about that. And also the call units, scam filters, I know that they're being called now. How does a person qualify? What are they? Because we didn't see a picture of one, so we don't really know what they are. But how does a person qualify for those? Because, like you say, it can affect a person's mental health. They worry. They can't tell. Often, you know, if they've got a scam or whatever. So I'd be interested to know a bit more about that. If you could expand. Have a bit of a cough if you want first. Thank you.
Thanks. The languages are Portuguese, Polish, and the other one has skipped out of my head conveniently, but I will make sure that I send that information across to Trina. It is an active language in Lincolnshire, so I apologise for not being able to remember it immediately. And in terms of call blocker, anybody can have a call blocker, anybody that's got a risk of fraud, people that are vulnerable. So we don't have a particular set criteria. You don't have to be a certain age, or you don't have to be from a certain area, but you have to be someone that has a risk of fraud. So maybe someone that's getting a lot of telephone calls, maybe somebody that's been at risk of another kind of fraud. So we do assess everybody individually, and at the moment National Trading Standards have a call blocker campaign available, and if you have somebody that needs one right now, you can contact National Trading Standards and make your own request for one. I can share those details as well if you'd like those.
Yes, thank you. Do they have to be paid for as well?
From Lincolnshire County Council, working with an individual, no. We install them and supply them, and they are for that person as long as they need them. And from the National Trading Standards point of view, again, no. But you can absolutely buy one as well. We use one supplied by a company called Truecall, who are the industry leaders. Their website is just truecall.co.uk. They're a small white unit, about this size, maybe 10 centimetres square, and they connect either to your phone line or now with a digital switchover through your modem, and they simply they can block every call coming through, or we can use them, like you say, to filter the calls that you do want and not the ones that you don't want.
Right. Can I just come back? Would you indulge me, Chair, please, just one more time? So anybody can have them if they want them. They can be bought and paid for, and you'll send me the details, or perhaps send us all the details of how we can access that. Because actually, when people used to have landlines, there was a facility originally through BT, it was star 61, and you could filter your own calls. Now, with all these different providers, you'd have thought, wouldn't you, that all the trading standards across the country would have said, right, we've got a scam issue. Everybody, all providers need to provide this within their systems. It's not something additional that should be provided. You know, people should be able to take control of their own mental health and control of their own calls coming in without having to rely on a service. And it's great that the service is there and it's been recognised and it's an additional thing. But I think that that's something that needs to be picked up by all providers, that if we are all suffering, and we are all suffering from scams, whether it be digitally, people who may not be able to recognise them, that should be dealt with on a national basis as well as a local basis. But I thank you for the information on that. And if you could send me that information about where people could obtain them, because, you know, people will want them anyway. They don't want to be suffering with scams and nuisance calls. I mean, we've actually had them. We get very common ones, don't we, about your line, you know, your connectivity on your laptop, and everybody knows now that. But they're getting very clever. So I think actually that would be really useful information, but actually is a national issue, and that all providers should be made to look at that properly, so that people are not suffering. It's one less thing to think about in these critical times that we're living in.
I take it that's the fire alarm, so we need to evacuate. Well, what do I say? Thank you for your cooperation on that matter. I think most of us are back now, probably apart from one. So I intend starting the meeting again. Just going to call on Chief Fire Officer and the Deputy just to explain what we think the cause might have been.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so the alarms went off. The team that you saw, they arrived. They did an investigation on the fire detector that was showing on the alarm panel. It's looking like it's, as we see, it's a false alarm, potentially probably dust-in detectors. But they did a thorough check of the void area, particularly in the roof space area, just to make sure there was no smouldering or any heat transformation that could have been undetected. So they've done a thorough inspection and obviously happy that there's nothing more than just an alarm going off, and hence the reason we're all back in here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next speaker I had in line was Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really, I just wanted to make the point to my fellow councillors that one of the best things they can do with regard to this fraud is to get the message out there. Go on your Facebook accounts, use your Twitter accounts. When you visit your parish and town councils, just pass the message on. The information's out there. The Friends Against Scams is a super resource to go to and use. Have a look, sign up, use the information and get it out there. It was mentioned as part of the presentation that there was a large percentage of people worried about scams, and even more people worried about scams than there was before. And in a way, this is a success because these people are finding out, and it's important that we give the information, and then I think the worry level will go down as the awareness of how to deal with it goes on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you. Councillor Mr. Clark. Not here. We'll move on to Councillor Lee. Councillor Lee.
It was only to just say, can we minute a vote of thanks to the firefighters? Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any other speakers? Got Vicky want to come back. Over to you, Vicky.
Just wanted to clarify, I've remembered the third language. It was Polish, I've forgotten it again. Polish, Portuguese and Romanian. I just wanted to quickly clarify the call blocker thing. To access a call blocker through our scams officer, there isn't a set criteria, but clearly the person needs to be vulnerable or at risk of fraud, and so they would be individually assessed by our officer. Then you can use the national system to claim one from national trading standards, and then finally you can purchase one yourself. So I will share all the details. Thank you ever so much.
Okay, thank you. I can see no further speakers. No? Okay. So thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item. I'm going to propose that the committee has reviewed the contents of the report and supports the continued delivery of the work of the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership Crime and Disorder Core Priority Group in the proposed format. Can members please raise your hand if you agree? Thank you. That's all agreed. And thank you, Vicky, for your presentation. We're now going to revert to sitting as the Public Protection and Community Scrutiny Committee for the remainder of the meeting. I move on to item 6. So item 6 is re-procurement of the Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue Fleet Maintenance. This item can be found on pages 29 to 38 of the agenda pack and is for pre-decision scrutiny prior to a decision by the Executive Councillor for Fire and Rescue and Cultural Services between the 6th and 10th of November. Actions required. The actions required by the committee are to consider the attached report and determine whether the committee supports the recommendations to the Executive Councillor as set out in the report, and also to agree that any additional comments to be passed on to the Executive Councillor in relation to this item. The report will be presented by Mark Baxter, Chief Fire Officer. We also have Fiona Fielding, Senior Commercial and Procurement Officer in attendance to help answer any questions on the procurement. So without further ado, over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Councillor. So yes, this paper is a bit of the background is we have a current contract that ensures we have fleet maintenance of our fire appliances, our light vehicles, but also much of our equipment on our appliances. We've had that contract in place for just come up for 9 years, and that contract has been extended on several occasions, and it is now due to expire at the end of March 2024. We now have this opportunity to go out to re-procurement. This paper sets out the options that we've considered in regards to re-procurement. We have focused on regards to where we've had the opportunity to look at collaboration opportunities, particularly with our colleagues within the police and also within Lincolnshire County Council. The paper outlines that at this moment in time, both of those collaborative opportunities are not viable at this moment in time due to the status of contracts that are in being within both of those organisations, and also ensuring that we have the best contract in place for Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue to future-proof and to ensure that we've got flexibility and agility in regards to be able to meet the future demands of what our potential fleet establishment will be. The proposals are looking at an initial 3-year contract with options to be extending those for 2 further 3 years. We're also looking at having options to having an 18-month clause break, and that's to give us the ability to ensure that we can review the contract to ensure that it meets the future demands of our fleet establishment, and also because of our equipment that we may need to evolve. And we're also getting the option to procure in 2 lots, and that's splitting out the large goods vehicle and equipment lot, and also our light vehicle fleet lot as well. So there is the option of having separate lots to be bidded for in regards to the whole of the programme. The programme we're expecting to be around £500,000 a year, which is currently already within the current revenue budget planning. With over a 9-year period, we're looking at a total of between £4.5 and £5 million potential contract. Hence the reason why we're looking for a key decision for this paper. The focuses we're also looking at is ensuring that the maintenance of the equipment is going to be a focal point in regards to that. So we recognise that the contractors that are available to be quite for our bespoke needs are relatively limited. So we do recognise that the contracts that are looking at the market, soft market structures that we put in place will be limited, but we know that we've got some strong contractors out there that are able to provide the services that we need for fire and rescue to ensure that we can future-proof both not only the maintenance of our equipment but also for our appliances. There's more details and technical specifications within the contract, and as you quite rightly say, we've got Fiona here and also Steve Topham, who has been leading in regards to this project, available for questions for the floor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'd now like to invite members of the committee to comment on this item. Councillor Skinny, do we have anyone wishing to speak? So Councillor Brockway, followed by Councillor Mrs Clark.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just 2 questions, if I may, please. I noticed that you've gone from a 12-month to an 18-month break clause, and I wondered if there was any reason for that. So that's my first question.
It was to give maximum opportunity really to explore other options should they come forward. So it was felt a year was probably too short, and it was the halfway point between the 3 years for the initial sort of contract period. So we've got 3 years plus 3 years plus 3 years. So 18 months seems a reasonable time frame.
Okay, thank you. And my second question, Chairman, is when you have these tenders, you have to go out. There are always very few options. There are not. I don't just mean for this one, for the fire service. Again and again, you find that there are very few companies that can provide for this sort of thing. What happens in a worst-case scenario if this partner at some point is unable to continue? Is there any backup in the market for you?
Worst case scenario is that we don't receive any bids and that we can't award a contract, in which case there are measures that we can take to negotiate with other contractors, either the current contractor or other contractors that we can find in the market, to bring some sort of contract conclusion in, but that would involve a negotiated procedure. Obviously, we have to follow our public contract regulations, and if a tender fails, we can then move on to other procedures to help us get a contract in place.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mrs Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. Excellent as usual, very informative, got loads of information in there. There's just a couple of things actually. One is just a request really on page 33 where it states at option 5, further scoping has been looked at with collaboration with Humberside Fire and Rescue. If that does happen, and I'm assuming that at the moment it can't because we're kind of out of sync, if that, it would make sense to me, but to the Fire and Rescue Service it may not, what with technologies and things, but that would be something that you could keep us updated on, Mark, if you can, and if that's all right with the Chair. The other thing that I wanted to ask, and I was just interested really, that on page 34 under point 110, by considering splitting, you said there, by considering splitting the tender, you were talking about the flexibility within that particular contractual agreement, procurement and commercial strategy. I just wondered, had you come up against, in your contract, had you actually come up against any inflexibilities that's made you, what was it that made you do that, reconsider it? Is it for ease of everything? But what were the inflexibilities that you found that you've come up against? So I just wanted to pick on that really. Thank you.
In exploring the options, the current contract is for both, so we haven't the ability to split the light vehicle fleet, for instance. There's a lot more players in the marketplace who'd be able to service our light fleet, less for our heavy fleet. So in the conversations we were having originally with Lincolnshire Police, for instance, there was a suggestion they may be able to do our light fleet, but certainly wouldn't be able to do our heavy fleet. So it's to give ourselves maximum opportunity to explore other options should they come to the fore. Ultimately, you know, any provider in the marketplace, like the current provider, could provide a quote for doing both or independent individual aspects. So it's to give ourselves the maximum flexibility to get the best possible service we can. Again, you know, partnering and collaboration with other agencies is a key focus. So it was really centred around that ability to do so.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Mr Clark, followed by Councillor Skinner.
Thank you, Chairman. In a similar vein, you talked about collaboration with other fire services, but obviously the county's got involvement with the police, highways, and their own vehicles that do various jobs for it. I'm wondering, in the long-term strategy, that the various departments could work together, that we could negotiate a far better contract, as you say, different types of vehicles, different contract. But if the county council as a whole could negotiate, we might get better value for money going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, the way the contract is structured is specifically to allow that flexibility to enable us to do that, give us the option to do that in the future. So, you know, where we previously had a longer term contract with less break points, the idea is this contract would probably give us much more flexibility to do that, absolutely.
Can I come back as well? Another question. While one of the major vehicles is being serviced, it's not a quick 10 minutes in and a check the oil. Obviously, it's out of commission maybe for several days. Have you got a contingency plan to cover that vehicle once it's offline, as it were? Thank you.
Yeah, we have spare vehicles that we keep for that purpose. So 3 to 4 vehicles we keep as spares for planned maintenance, and we always keep some in reserve just in case we get an unplanned issue that takes a frontline vehicle off the run. So yeah, absolutely, we do make provision for that.
Okay, Councillor Skinner.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I mean, we've no need to worry about availability. It was here this morning quite quickly. So, you know, the value for money is really part of this, but in maintaining specialist vehicles, obviously, as well as the people that use them needing continual training, the specialists that provide the services need continual training, and also on certain vehicle marks approval so that they can do that. Is that covered within the contract, please?
Yes, it will be. It's written into the specification that all of the staff that work on the contract have to hold specific certifications. So you have MOT technicians, so only an MOT technician can perform the actual MOT on the vehicles, whether it be the large goods or the light goods vehicles. So all of those are actually written into the specification.
Does this also include the equipment that's actually stored in the lockers as well?
Yes, it includes everything, yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. The Joint Ambulance Conveyance Project, there was 3 ambulances, I believe. Are they included in this contract?
No, they won't be included in that contract. They're ultimately EMAS's assets. And the programme that we've done in the recent review of medical response that included the co-responding and the JACP vehicles, EMAS have withdrawn them from that capability at this moment in time because the demand isn't there for EMAS to cover the areas that were previously in there. So that they're a scope of this contract.
Okay, so have they gone back to EMAS, those 3
Yes, they have,
ambulances?
yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Is there such a thing as time restraints in the contract? I'm thinking out now to carry out repairs. I'm just thinking of an on-call crew out in the sticks in the rural Lincolnshire somewhere. A hose is broken or something and they can no longer continue. The engine develops a fault and it's not drivable. What goes on then? Do they bring out another appliance? We need to be thinking about those on-call firefighters getting back to the primary employer. What happens in those circumstances?
Yeah, it's exactly that case. So the contract provides for a spare vehicle to be made available to them, driven to them, the vehicle that's broken down, recovered in some way, shape or form, taken back to workshops and be repaired. So we constantly maintain that high level of availability that we've currently got. So yeah, the arrangements are very robust in terms of the arrangements to deal with a breakdown in the field, so to speak. And
Sean, do they have time constraints? They have to get it repaired in a certain amount of time?
I'll look to my colleague here, but I'm pretty sure there is part of the KPIs in the contract are those timeframes, yes.
Okay, Fiona, did you want to expand on that at all?
Yes, so we have a suite of performance indicators that include the timeliness in terms of routine maintenance, turnaround times, and also in terms of recovery times. And getting the vehicles back onto the road.
And you're satisfied those was met under the current contract?
Yes, they currently perform very well.
Thank you. I'm sure there's lessons learned from the current contract, and these areas, I take it, have all been took into consideration when renewing the new contract.
Yes, they are. We currently have a contracts manager within Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue. They work as a business relationship manager that manages the contract on a day-by-day basis. They manage if there's any underperformance or manages anything that we need to change in the performance. And as Fiona has said to date, the performance in regards to their current management contract has been very good, and we've not been seeing any issues, but we do have a point of contact that does have that business relationship management that continues.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sneath. You're on.
Thank you. Actually, following on from Councillor Pepper's points, thinking about the vastness of the county, coming from the deep south as we do, I was just wondering, do you have any capacity or thoughts? Would there be any potential for, let's say something happened in Crowland and the vehicle and the men who mend it were right up at the other end of the county, would you ever consider using local firms? We've got a lot of specialist lorry firms around us who have massive vehicles and who I would have thought could perhaps provide a slightly or even a lot quicker service than bringing someone all the way down from the other end of the county. Just a thought. Thank you.
No, thank you, Councillor. It is is a valid point. Actually, we are a large geographical county, and the timings of the codes, and we call them codes, in regards to if we've got an appliance off the run, the defining time limitation is the travel distance. However, the caution I would propose in regards to having local suppliers in that is about consistency in regards to the servicing, and particularly in regards to the specialism in regards to the equipment. By having it in one area and owned by and the responsibility by one supplier, is that also helps with the maintaining of the timetabling of the regular maintenance program as well as the reactionary maintenance if something goes wrong. But it's something that we will continually look at. But at the moment, we feel that it gives us a bit more of a robust maintenance program if we've got one supplier that is centrally located.
And just following on from that, I do recall one supplier had a sub-depot or something at Peterborough at one time. I take it that's not still the case.
Not in the current contractors that we've got at the moment, but obviously we're going out for tender, and then we'll see what the market reaches back us on that.
Okay. I can see no further questions, so thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item. Our comments from today's discussion have been recorded by Tracy Johnson, Senior Scrutiny Officer, for passing on to the Executive Councillor. I'm going to propose that the committee supports the recommendations to the Executive Councillor for Fire and Rescue, and that we agree to pass on our comments. Can I have a... Sorry.
Apologies, Chairman. Councillor Corey would just like to come in.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Councillor Corey, online.
Thank you, Chairman, and sorry I can't be with you this morning. Thank you for your comment and the questions. Some really good, wide-ranging, valid questions. Thank you for those. We'll take all those on board, and I thank you for your ongoing support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Corey. So I've proposed that we go ahead with it. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Skinner. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Those against? Any abstentions? Thank you, that's carried. And thank you to Mark, Steve and Fiona for that presentation. We'll now move on to item 7, which is the future funding for citizens' advice. This item can be found on pages 39 to 74 of the agenda pack and is for pre-decision scrutiny prior to a decision by the Executive on the 7th of November. The actions required for us today are to consider the attached report and determine whether the committee supports the recommendations to the Executive as set out in the report, and agree any additional comments to be passed on to the Executive in relation to this item. The report will be presented by Anne-Marie Scott, Assistant Director, Prevention and Early Intervention. We also have Derek Ward, Director of Public Health, and Emma Krasinska, Programme Manager, Public Health, in attendance to help answer any questions. So, firstly, over to you, Anne-Marie.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman. So, following the transfer of responsibility for citizens' advice funding from corporate services, a detailed review of the service and the funding mechanisms has been undertaken. The review has revealed a complex picture. We have 3 citizens' advice branches, each being a separately constituted charity with their own service model and income streams, including national specialist contracts, charitable grants and project funding. The branches come together to form Citizens Advice Lincolnshire and are accountable to the National Citizens Advice Charity. Alongside this, there are multiple district council funders with different funding arrangements and different grant conditions. The grant supports the provision of core services by Citizens Advice, which includes debt advice, help to maximise sources of welfare, income and housing issues. These functions support the council in meeting its obligations under the Care Act to provide or commission a range of services that help prevent the deterioration of need and promote well-being. The preventive approach also reduces pressure on services such as adult social care by reducing escalation of need and intervening before crisis point. LCC has provided core funding to Citizen Advice for an annual grant for at least 10 years. Funding was set at $278,000 in 2018-19. District councils also contribute to their respective branches, with the 2023 collective annual value of district and county core funding being over 716,000. This funding supports the branches to lever in additional funding for wider service provision and specific projects. This totaled 1.9 million last year. The review established the grant funding agreement remains the most appropriate mechanism. However, the annual agreement is administrative burdensome and restricts ongoing service improvement. The Citizens Advice service model has changed over time, and there are local variations across the branches. However, all offer the same main components via telephone and face-to-face through a combination of paid staff and volunteers. Details of the services offered, offices and outreach locations are to be found in Appendix 1 of the Executive Report. In terms of demand for citizens' advice, this has grown. There's been a marked increase in workload directly associated with debt management and income maximisation. However, as a result, in 2022-23, the service supported Lincolnshire residents to obtain over 6 million in additional welfare benefits. Alongside this, while more issues are being resolved at first point of contact, individual clients are seen to be presenting with more complex and multiple issues. These can take more time and require a greater level of experience to resolve. Last year, over 13,000 calls were answered via the wider advice line, and 8,316 clients accessed the core services. This is a 17% increase on the previous year. Demand is such that in Q1 of this year, 50% of telephone calls were answered. However, this is an improvement on the overall 2023 call answer rate of 33%. Client satisfaction feedback indicates that all three branches are performing well, with Lincoln and Lindsay performing above national levels. The review also included engagement with district council funders, and there is a general appetite for a stronger partnership approach, which would encourage consistency across the three branches. All the districts are in different financial positions and different grant arrangements exist, with most but not all funding on an annual basis. However, part of the engagement work has found that shared reporting framework to support a consistent provision of information by Citizens Advice is favoured. An equality impact assessment has been completed and identified the positive impact of the service on people with protected characteristics. 53% of their clients reported that they were disabled or had long-term health conditions, and those over the age of 65 represented 20% of clients. The service also has a positive impact on crime and disorder, helping clients find solutions to issues that could trigger or influence offending behaviour or addictions such as gambling. The report concludes that moving to a 3-year grant funding agreement would reduce the administrative burden associated with an annual agreement and provide certainty at a time when demand is increasing. It may also support Citizens Advice to be more effective in obtaining other longer-term funding sources. There are also wider benefits in working more closely with district funding partners to align reporting, and the ICB have expressed an interest in future working. Aligned to this, an annual uplift in line with the national living wage would see the funding increase annually over the 3-year period to support rising staff costs. The grant agreement would be monitored by the commercial team throughout its term. I'd obviously refer the committee to the recommendations of the executive report, and myself and Emma Krasinska would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. On that note, I'd now like to invite members of the committee to comment on this item, please. Councillor Skinner, do we have any one wishing to speak? Councillor Lee.
Thanks, Chair. Just a few comments, really. Huge thank you to Emma. This is such a thorough, as I think I said to you when we were stood outside, this report's forensic. It absolutely goes into all of the detail. Indeed, it is so forensic that I had to have a briefing with Anne-Marie. She kindly went through it with me because I wanted to make sure that I'd understood it properly. This is something that I've been passionate about for about 18 months. I think it was the end of May of last year that I first said, you know, we really ought to be giving them more money. They're doing a sterling job. It's all laid out in there. They help us meet statutory responsibilities. We're not just doing it out of generosity. We actually do have to do this. But I think the positive, the absolute positive I'll take from this, I think it's wonderful that they've got the 3-year arrangement. That is just so much better for them. And I'm pleased to see that there will be a cost of living increase, because I think that's vital. My disappointment, because it's always got to be tinged with something, and it's a political comment, it is not aimed at officers. I think that they were awarded, I've worked this out, they've been getting 278, the figure that they've been getting since 2018 compared to what they're going to get from April of next year, there's only a difference of £17,000, is that right? And to me, that amount of money in 5 years isn't really going to cover 2 years of a cost of living crisis, which will have been in it for 2 years by the time we get to next April. So I really think that we could have given them a one-off sum, particularly bearing in mind that we put an extra 10 million or something into highways very recently. I do think we could have been more generous there, but I am very, very pleased with this, because I think it's absolutely a step in the right direction, and I would commend this. I think it's excellent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I was indeed going to ask a similar question. I was going to say, how did we come up with the figure of 295,236? It's been fixed at 278 since 2018, 2019. So similar question. How did we arrive at that amount?
Thank you, Chair. So if you refer to the resource comments within the report, that details that's based on the national living wage increase, and which is currently 6.2%. So there is a model in there based on that being the same for the future 2 years after this year, but that will of course vary depending on any changes to that. And that is intended to reflect increased staffing costs that Citizens Advice may experience, as that's where the core funding goes.
Okay, maths was never my best subject. Is that 6.2% per year since 2018-19, or is that 6.2% overall since 2018-19?
So that will be a 6.2% increase from April next year, and then each year the national living wage increase will be added onto it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lee.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back. Thank you for indulging me. Can I ask that in the comments on the report, and if it's just from myself as a councillor, that's fair enough, just disappointment that we haven't given them some sort of award that recognises there's been very little increase since 2018 in what we give them as a council, but the cost of living has actually gone through the roof in the last 2 years, never mind about the 5 years. So can I ask that it be noted for the record, please, that I feel that we should have given them some sort of award of recognition in the fact that, you know, they've had very little, well, they haven't had any increase really for 5 years, have they? In fact, it'll be more like 6 by the time they start to get this money. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. I think we all feel for them, and that will be noted. Do you want to enlarge upon that at all, Anne-Marie?
I think, Chair, the only thing I would point out, as in the report, that obviously LCC is one of a number of funders, and district councils also fund their respective areas as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mr Clark, followed by Councillor Mrs Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. It's regarding the payment to the charity. How is that dealt with, please?
So that's dealt with through a grant funding agreement, which is established and monitored by our commercial team. So through the course of that grant funding agreement, it will be reviewed against the terms of that grant agreement.
So I might have not made myself clear. When do we pay the money to them? Does it in one lump sum at the beginning of the year, or is it staggered throughout the year? Thank you.
It is paid through to them quarterly.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mrs Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. It's excellent as it was when we looked at it last year, and I'm so pleased that you're going to now benefit later on from 2024. I just really wanted to draw members' attention to the very end of the report, actually, with all of the information that's in there, with the interactions and all the reports that you can access. I did do that, and from a benefits background, it's really useful for me to look at that. And also quite surprising as well to remind members that there's a lot of unclaimed benefit entitlement and privileges that people do not access because they sometimes don't know how to, they perhaps don't want to, there might be some stigma still attached to that and they don't want to go and ask about it. So it's really important that people who are entitled to benefit when they fall on hard times must access it, and we need to make sure that we signpost that to them. But there's loads of information out there that Citizens Advice provide, and the cost of living dashboard, I would advise everybody to have a look at that, because you can look at everything, and it was updated in October this year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Anne-Marie, I can see that there's 3 branches, as we discussed. They all seem busy and seem to be getting busier too. So much so they're not able to take all the calls they'd like to. But I see one of the branches takes calls from outside Lincolnshire. Could you tell me, is that to the detriment of our residents in Lincolnshire?
So yes, one of the branches that is one of the smaller branches has an arrangement for the national advice line. That means reciprocal support. So it does mean that their calls will roll to the national advice line when they can't answer them, but it does mean at times when they have spare capacity, they will reciprocate that back as part of that arrangement. So overall for them, being a smaller branch, that is a benefit for them. So
just to expand on that, if we're too busy in Lincolnshire to answer those calls, they're then directed somewhere out of county to be answered? That's right. They will go to one of the other branches elsewhere that will answer those. Okay, thank you. Have any further people wishing to talk? No. Okay. So thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item. Our comments from today's discussion have been recorded by Tracy Johnson, Senior Scrutiny Officer, for passing on to the Executive. Notice I did say scrutiny on that occasion. I'm going to propose that the committee supports recommendations to the Executive and that we agree to pass on our comments. So I've proposed, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Lee. We'll now vote on that. So all those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those against? Any abstentions? So thank you. That is carried. And thank you, Anne-Marie. We'll now move on to item 8, which is potential topics for scrutiny review by Scrutiny Panel A. This item is on pages 75 to 82 of the agenda pack and sets out a request from the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board to identify a suggestion for a potential scrutiny review by Scrutiny Panel A. Our actions for today are that we are to consider the request from the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board for a suggestion, and bearing in mind the following criteria as detailed in Appendix A. Would the proposed review topic add value? Is the proposed review topic of concern to local residents? Is the proposed review topic a priority for the council or partner agency? Would the proposed review topic avoid duplication with any other reviews? Is the proposed review topic unlikely to be affected by new legislation? Is the review topic sufficiently focused to be completed within an appropriate timescale? The report will be presented by Tracy Johnson. So over to you, Tracy.
Thank you, Chairman. So yes, as its meeting on the 28th of September, the Overview Scrutiny Management Board agreed to request that each Overview Scrutiny Committee consider whether it has a topic that will benefit from an in-depth review by Scrutiny Panel A, taking into account the prioritisation toolkit attached to Appendix A, as Councillor Pepper's just read out. Having consulted with senior officers, one potential topic in relation to vapes has been put forward for consideration. This topic will review Lincolnshire County Council's response to the current vapes issues with non-compliant vapes usage and the use of vapes by children with supporting a public health message to reduce the numbers of cigarette smokers. Consideration will be given to the activity undertaken by training standards, education, children's services and public health to ensure consistent and coherent messaging and activities across all departments. Members are invited to consider this potential topic and to put forward any additional suggestions for consideration. The committee is then requested to decide if it wishes to put forward one potential topic to the board for its consideration. The board will consider all the suggestions from the scrutiny committees at its meeting on the 21st of December with a view to making a decision on which review topic will be undertaken by Scrutiny Panel A. Happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. So just to reiterate, we can put vapes forward as suggested by the Assistant Director, or we can come up with something else if should we so wish. So over to yourselves. Councillor Sneath.
Thank you. I'd like to support that. I know this is a really big issue and it's not going to get any smaller, it's just going to get bigger because we've got children as young as 7 and 8 wanting to use vapes who probably years ago wouldn't have wanted to smoke, but they do now want to use vapes because they're so tempted by the flavours and tastes of what they believe they are. And I was recently at one of our secondary schools at an event, talking to the teachers, and they were saying children are bringing them in to secondary schools and they've been made to look like erasers, but they're actually vapes. You know, the makers of these vapes are not, they're not caring about the fact they're targeting children and the long-term damage it can do. We just don't know about that yet, and I think this would be a really good topic for us to get into now while it's still in comparatively early stages. Sure. Thank you.
Councillor Skinner.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very much in support of this. For a long time, I think that these devices should also be licensed in some way to stop misuse and people really who shouldn't be using them. It goes further than that from the point of view. These things also cause fires as well, so there needs to be a proper way of disposing of this lot as well. So I'm very much in support, Chairman. Thank you. Councillor
Lee.
Thanks, Chair. I'll not repeat everything that everybody said, but I support this too. Thank you.
Councillor Mr Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to throw something else into the mix if possible. In view of the recent flooding across the county, I'm wondering whether we should be looking at that as a topic. A, lessons learned, the emergency responses, the equipment that we use, the stores that we've got available or materials that we've got available to help communities deal with the flooding that is occurring or likely to occur. And certainly with the climate change, we've been forever told that we're going to get more and more of these abnormal storms. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Tracy, you was indicating.
Thank you, Chairman. That potentially might be more of an environment economy topic, actually, because flooding more sits under their remit. So it'd probably be more for that committee maybe to put that forward as a potential topic. I'm not sure if they've suggested anything yet, but that's some feedback. That's for something for them to consider maybe, especially after recent events.
Okay, so we think that sits with environment economy.
I think so.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brockway.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll support this. Obviously, I think it's a really good thing to be looking at. One thing I did want to raise, though, and Tracy knows this, is that we have situations sometimes where members don't put themselves forward for these panels. We've got a situation recently. Only 2 of the political groups, yours and ours, have actually put themselves forward. So there are no independents, no Lib Dems, nothing. And the numbers available are not, haven't all been taken up. There are several empty seats. And it's an important topic. It's about traffic management and various other things. And I wonder if in this excellent paper or somewhere going forward, we could have a fail-safe system if members don't put themselves forward or if it is not the topic they want to go with. I mean, we have tried several times, haven't we, to sort of stir up interest. And it's an important topic, but only 2 groups have put themselves forward. That's Karen's group and our group, and nobody else. So I wonder then, because it means the independents and Lib Dems have got no voice in this, which is a great shame. So I wanted to raise that, and it is a bit of a problem which happens occasionally, and I wonder if it's something we could prepare for going forward. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brockway. That's noted. Councillor Mrs Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to add my support to the vapes, really, because I think we brought it up several times now in this particular committee. And it shows that we're listening to the fears that have been expressed not only by parents but by teachers, you know, other areas, that other people, other social areas that have brought it up and are very worried about it. So it shows that we're listening, and we're going to look at that and look at it and, you know, do a deep dive on it. I think that's really important. Thank you.
Okay. Can see no one else wishing to speak, so I'm going to propose that the committee puts forward vapes as our suggestion for a scrutiny review for consideration by the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board at its meeting on the 21st December. Can members please raise your hand if you agree? Thank you. That's agreed. And thank you, Tracy. Move on then to item 9, which is the Public Protection Community Scrutiny Committee Work Programme. This item is on pages 83 to 92 of the agenda pack and sets out the committee's work programme for 2023-2024. The actions required by the committee are to review the work programme and highlight any additional scrutiny activity which could be included for consideration in the work programme. The report will be presented by Tracy. You're having a busy day today, Tracy. So over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I have no changes to report to the work programme. The next meeting is on the 12th of December. The committee will be considering company reports on the LCC coronial toxicology contract. That's a pre-decision report for an Executive Council decision between the 15th and 22nd December. The outcomes of His Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Service inspection of Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue Service. The Community Risk Management Plan 2024-2028 pre-consultation. An update on the Multiply Numeracy Programme for Year 2. The Quarter 2 Performance Report. And under the Crime Disorder Committee, it will be considering the Serious Violence in Lincolnshire Partnership Response Mission Report. I'm happy to take any suggestions for the work programme. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Any questions? Councillor Mr Clark, followed by Councillor Mrs Clark.
Thank you very much, Chairman. One thing I would like to maybe bring before the committee is that maybe next year, July time maybe, depending on how the fire service can cope, now that we are the owners of the training establishment at Waddington, if we could have a short report as to what we're now doing with the establishment now that we own it and what its future plans are likely to be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mrs Clark.
Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair. I'm asking for your indulgence actually on the 12th of December and asking if we can look at the Crime and Disorder Scrutiny Committee item first. And then is it possible we could just slightly rearrange the order and then look at the numeracy programme as the first item? And then we've got all the stats together. I know that might, you know, people might lose the will to live, but sometimes, sometimes we can miss things because we've come to the end of a meeting and these items are really quite important. They are to me anyway, but it's just merely a request, an observation.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
I think the argument sometimes that all the agenda items are important and it's a job to... but I will discuss that with Tracy. We will discuss that at the pre-meeting prior to the main meeting, yeah. See what we can sort out. So thank you for that. Any... Oh, Councillor Lee.
I'd support that actually, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. No more, so thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item. I'm going to propose that we approve the existing work programme as detailed with those things taken into account. Can I ask you to raise your hand if you agree? Thank you, that's agreed. Thank you, Tracy. Item 10 is consideration of exempt information. Item 11 on the agenda contains exempt information and will now need to vote on whether we go into private session. I propose the following motion. That under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public and press be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act. I'm proposing, do I have a seconder? Councillor Skinner. We'll now vote on this motion. You'll vote on whether you support the motion to exclude the press and public for the remainder of the meeting. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those against? Any abstentions? Can't be. So thank you, that is agreed. We'll now pause while the live streaming is switched off.